Hello and welcome to a new episode of Mole in Space, your Starfield podcast. My name is ChaosMole, and it is now technically the first week is over for Starfield Early Access, and the first week of Starfield full release has begun because the game came officially out on Wednesday. Well, depending on where you lived, even on Tuesday for some people. But it is now officially out since a few days, and we have a lot to talk about. The first thing is we have to talk about the summer, which came back, and no, that's not really important. It's just too warm. But there is actually a lot we have to talk about regarding Starfield. And the first thing I want to make clear, I have finished the main story. This is New Game Plus, what you're seeing here. But before you were panicking and you were closing down the video or anything, there are no spoilers here. There's nothing which would take anything away from the story. I will not talk about the main story at all. I will not even mentioning some of the gameplay stuff. You don't really have to worry about this at all. This is completely spoiler free. We will talk a little bit about New Game Plus, but in a way where we'll completely omit anything story related. So again, when we get to that, I will make sure to inform you. It will not be out of nowhere. But as I said, there is no spoiler here. You don't have to be afraid of that. So, it has been a week, and the first good news, Starfield has over 6 million players. Now, with that said, that doesn't mean they have sold 6 million copies of Starfield in the first week. That's not how it works because, well, the game is also on Game Pass, right? And it makes much more sense to talk about players when you don't really know how many people have actually bought the game or how many people have just been playing the Game Pass version. I'm playing the Game Pass version, right? And what we have seen, at least on Steam, with the player numbers, it seems to be a smaller part of the people who actually invested into the Steam version. And most people probably just waited for the Game Pass version, which I can totally understand. Especially, and this is super interesting, that you can now use mods for the Game Pass version. You might remember for the previous Bethesda games that modding was nearly impossible because Game Pass was always locking away your game data file and you couldn't access that. And so many modders were just like, yeah, can't make anything about that, sorry. But I'm running mods on my Game Pass version here. It's as simple as installing it on the Steam version. And it was one of the reasons why I actually considered to get the Steam version, because I've been now using Game Pass for over 3 years, or 4 years even. I started to use it when I was still streaming on Mixer, because as a Mixer partner, more of the higher end partners, we got Game Pass for free. It was one of the boons Microsoft gave us. And so I had Game Pass for 2 years for free. And then, unfortunately, it was also the end of Mixer, of course. And I still stuck with Game Pass because Game Pass is amazing for streaming. It's amazing to test out a lot of games. And I just, I stuck with Game Pass. But one of the reasons why I didn't want to buy it play it on Game Pass, I was kind of concerned that I couldn't use mods later. And the reality is, you cannot just take your save files, as far as I understand, and put it into the Steam version later on. So I had to make the decision, do I want to stick with it or not? Now, it turns out I can. So I can just use the mods like everyone else, and doesn't really stop me. But Mole, what is when Game Pass is running out at some point? Then you cannot play the game anymore. Yeah, fair point. But also, again, I'm using Game Pass quite often. A lot of the games I'm streaming in my channel are Game Pass games. I don't have a problem with subscription-based things. It's just I was one of the very early adopters of not using any DVDs anymore or CDs or whatever, right? Like, I think the last game I bought, I think, was Diablo 3. That was the last physical game I bought, and only because I was on a special press event for the release of Diablo 3, and basically they sold the collector's edition to journalists for $40, so it wasn't even cheaper than the normal version of the game. Again, they sold it. This is so typical Blizzard, but that's not the topic here. That's so not the topic. But let's go back to Starfield. So, first week, 6 million players, looking pretty good. I think there will be more and more players coming over time. We have seen it with Skyrim, we have seen it with Fallout. There has been a lot of like weird discussions about like just the game itself. And can I just mention this, that everyone is looking at you at all the time is so weird. It is so weird. I always find that so weird. And for everyone who is not like having the YouTube video on right now, basically I'm sitting here at the bar, right, and recording this, and NPCs are just looking at you for most of the time. It's one of the weird Bethesda quirks, and I don't understand that. But going back to the topic at hand, the release happened. I think there will be more and more players coming in, especially with mods. There are quite a bit of players who just wait, and there are quite a bit of players who will never touch this game because it's a sci-fi game. I saw some people making fun about like, oh, only 6 million players? Lol, Elden Ring had more. Yeah, but Elden Ring was also gigantious hyped, kept the hype, and more importantly, fantasy. Fantasy always sells more than sci-fi. I'm not saying that sci-fi is not selling. That is a misunderstanding. But in comparison, it's not an Elder Scrolls, right? And I love it. I love sci-fi games. Huge fan. And I'm just glad to finally have a sci-fi game which is not Fallout, you know? So I think the release went well. We will see how long this is going on. Keep in mind that this is like one of the main releases this year. I know there's also, Forza, who is getting its release. But let's be real here. That number will probably be much smaller than Starfield. Because, it's a niche game in the end. But this is definitely one of those games which is carrying the system. Do I believe that Starfield is carrying the Xbox? I think so. There were quite a bit of people who said, hey, this game is coming out. I would definitely not get a PC for it. Oh, well, seems like I have to get an Xbox. And it seems to run well on Xbox Series X. And it seems to run okay on Xbox Series S. So it's fine. For me, interestingly enough, so the whole time when I played this game, I had no crashes. Nothing. I had the occasional slowdowns here and there of like some FPS issues, especially when I'm going here into oh my god, stop staring at me. Especially if I'm going into a killer city, there seems to be this portal you are coming in, right? The entrance. And because it's such a narrow place with sometimes a lot of NPCs, it just slows down dramatically. And so that's where I have some FPS issues sometimes, but it's not really a problem. Never have FPS issues in the combat, and definitely not inside. Like, I can just repeat what I said last week with this is the best Bethesda release since ever. Like, I know people are always like, oh, do you remember the days of Morrowind? Oh, good times. Yeah, I've been there. And man, it certainly wasn't performance nor bug-wise. Like that game was also already the typical Bethesda mess. But I had a lot of fun with this game already. I'm now 60 hours in about that. I really enjoy myself, and I'm planning to do much more. I have already planned a lot of videos on Starfield. More is coming. The next one, we have to talk about a big issue I have with the game, but I will not spoiler that, not even here. But yeah, we will have to talk about that. I will take a deep dive on weapon stats, right? Because a lot of people are asking for it and trying to understand what those stats actually mean and how the damage is coming together. And I did a lot of testing, and I figured it basically out. It took me a while, though. So there will be a video of that as well. Speaking of which, speaking about Bethesda being inconsequential sometimes, you know what the Killer City has? When you were going... Oh my god. When you were going down there is a shooting range. There is a full functional shooting range down there. And I'm like, holy moly, that's amazing, especially if I want to test some weapons, right? Like they have weapons there, they have ammunition there, yeah, they have targets with different range, and so on and so forth. Like you're just looking at it and you go, yeah, oh my god, that's fantastic. Till you're starting to shoot and realize there's no damage indicator. You're not hitting the targets. So this whole shooting range is completely useless. And it's like, oh my god, Bethesda, why? Why? I don't get it. Right. Inconsequential. They have that problem so often. Like it's the Bethesda curse of having huge worlds, and then you sometimes have a feeling some people started in a certain area of this game to put it together, and at some point they were like, oh, we have to go to the other one, we have to do some changes there, and then they're forgetting about this part but never return to it ever again. It's such a Bethesda game thing to do. They have that quite a bit, right? So yeah. But let's talk about New Game Plus. So, as I said, I have now finished the main story. And again, this is completely spoiler free. You don't have to skip this. I hate it when people are saying, oh, it's spoiler free, and then they're hinting at things, and it's like, great, but because I'm already this far into the story, those hints are enough so that I know what is coming, right? I hate that so much, so it will not happen here. But what I can say is, I finished the main story, and I can agree with everyone saying this is the best Bethesda story Bethesda has ever made. Why? Because there are twists and turns, there's some stuff I didn't saw coming, right? And it is actually telling a pretty good story where you actually can make some decisions down the road. And those decisions will have consequences, right? And I think that is really important and a major big step for Bethesda games. So I am very happy. I was very happy with the story, what they were trying to do, and I'm glad that I finished the story. Now, what I'm seeing people asking quite a bit, and I'm thinking about making a video, but I will answer that question right here, is people are asking, should you rush to New Game Plus? Do you need New Game Plus? And the answer is no. I can now fairly say no, you do not. I would recommend to go with New Game Plus when you haven't really invested too much into the game world beyond the main story, and you just want to have that out of the way, then I totally recommend it. But especially if you have already invested quite a bit into all the other gameplay elements, I would not recommend it. Like, you are getting a few features here and there, some reactions here and there, and some knowledge you have now here and there when you were going into a new game plus. And that's cool, but did it change how I play the game in any meaningful way? Nah, not really. So, if you don't want to, if you haven't like done too much in the game world, do the main story. But if you already have some solid hours in everything else but the main story, you don't have to rush it. You don't have to rush it. And the good thing is, at the end, the game is asking you, do you want to start New Game Plus? Right? So it never comes surprising. It just, yeah. So that's what I can always say about it. We will definitely at some point have a little bit more of a like dedicated episode of the main story and like story in general. Like, I'm working on a pretty major faction right now, with a lot of story parts in there, and we will have to talk about that. But we will have like a huge spoiler talk, maybe 2 or 3 weeks down the road, when really everyone has seen their fair share of the game, right? But let's talk a little bit about gameplay, shall we? Because there is more to talk about. I know we have already talked about the interface last week, but I'm finally using a mod. For everyone who hasn't seen it, it's Starfield inventory, and that's the mod right here. Right, it makes it easier to see stuff, how many you have, the damage. It even shows you the DPS, right? It sees you the values and then how many you can sell it and all that. Like, oh, this is such a better interface. And I know people always say, yeah, but I mean, come on, Mo, the original interface was made with consoles in mind. We have to say, what? You can still navigate this with a controller. Like, this doesn't really change anything. It's just giving you more information, and it's easier to figure out what the hell is going on in your inventory, right? And highly recommend it. Like, check out Starfield UI inventory. There we go. Starfield inventory. It's such a better way. It's such a better way to just, get there. And yeah, highly recommend that. But I've also been doing quite a bit of ship combat, and ship combat, whoa, there is a problem, and I will probably make another video about this at some point, but it seems like it. I have to do more tests, but from what I have seen, it seems like enemy ships are scaling with your level. And what I mean with that is not that the enemy is level 36 when you are level 35. That's not what I meant. That's completely fine. What I mean is, oh, you're level 35. Oh, well, then you should have a B-class ship at this point, right? Or a C-class ship even. So we will definitely send some B-class ships, well, even a C-class ship, your way. When you are still flying around with an A-class ship, it's getting really hard. Like, I was trying to get the 15 destroying ships, and it was rough. It was a lot of hours of me slowly getting frustrated. And yeah, I have to sneeze. Give me a second here. Oh, excuse me for that. But yeah, it becomes frustrating because the ship's scaling with your level. So if you want to do ship combat, and you do at some point. I highly recommend to unlock that. I I have to admit, I think I figured out some skills where challenges, the sooner you do them, the better, right? Like everything with ship combat, and especially if you want to upgrade the level of piloting, right? Do that as early as possible. Also, highly recommend Starship Design, because what it does is it unlocks certain parts for your starship which are stronger than the actual level. So let's say you will unlock some parts with the first level which will allow to take rank A parts for your ship which are clearly rank B parts. So you just get more powerful parts for the lower ship, right? So I highly recommend this. Like, I really do. Anything else I would highly recommend? Deeply disappointed by Melee. I kind of made a video about it. Well, I made a video about sneaking, but Melee is also unfortunately falling into that category. Deeply disappointed by it. Just in general, I think there will be more perks I will figure out where you want to start as early as possible with it, because it gets really rough. I think stealth is also one of the... No, actually, I think stealth is getting easier. You can cheese stealth. You can actually cheese stealth. I cheesed it. I'm not gonna lie. Easiest way to do it is grab a silenced weapon with long range and then stay a long way away from the enemy, like 60, 70 meters, and just shoot. They will not realize where you are. You barely do any damage. Doesn't matter. It counts as a stealth attack. So, yeah. This one gets a little bit harder because you concealment, you have to do melee and unarmed sneak attacks. Like there are definitely some things where I'm like, oh yeah, you wanna do this early, because damn, it gets hard later on, right? But I'm still looking into that. I'm also unlocking more and more weapons, newer weapons, and it was really insightful for the weapon stat video I'm planning, especially melee weapons. Some people, I have seen some people asking like, oh my god, what am I looking out for with melee weapons? And the answer is look up the perks you have. If the weapon has some really good perks, especially if you were doing sneaking and you have the one which does extra damage when the enemy still has full health, that is a pretty good thing. But beyond that, damage is king. Like, damage is absolutely king in that regard. So always take the weapon with the highest damage, because unfortunately all the melee weapons have the same attack speed. 1 attack per second, 3 attacks, then there's a little bit like a wind down, and then you can do the attacks again. But it's 1 attack per second. So unfortunately damage is the king, and it's basically the only stat you need. We will talk more about range weapons, because there's also some weird stuff going on. Like, it's this, who came up with this and thought this is good for the player to understand what the hell this weapon does? Right? I definitely, like, one of the things I got flabbergasted by is, and again, I will talk about this full scale in the video I'm preparing, so definitely check it out. This is not all of it, but one of the things I really realized is, why is there no reload speed on the weapon stats? And if you now think, well, because there isn't, oh, there is, and they can be drastically different. Like, there are weapons which you can reload in 2.8 to 3 seconds, like I think this one. And then there are weapons which, like the Maelstrom, which takes like 4 seconds. And there's even like the old Earth shotgun, which takes 6 seconds to reload. It's crazy what we are talking about when it comes to just reload time. And that Bethesda is not showing it at all. It's like, wait, what? Why? What is the reason for that decision, right? Especially is such an important decision maker on just damage in general, right? So yeah, there is so much to discuss, which we will certainly do in the video. Yes, for sure. Anything else I really want to talk about? Well, there is actually one thing I want to talk about. And I know it's a Bethesda game. I'm not blaming it for that. But, man, it really shows how inconsequential some of the things are you're doing here in this game. So let me tell you a bit of a story. I was on the moon of a planet in the middle of nowhere. It's like minus 200 degrees, no air, there are no spaceports there. It's out in the boonies, to say the least, right? And I was just walking around, looking a little bit around, doing some like exploration. And then I see a person coming my way. I'm like, what the hell is that bounty hunt? What is that? It was a single person. I was aiming at the person because then you can see if they're aggressive or not. They're not. I was like, okay, not aggressive. And the person had a huge lizard behind them. I was like, what the frick is going on here? So I was talking to her. And she was like, oh, yeah, well, I can sell you some stuff if you want to. I'm a merchant. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Doesn't really explain what you're doing out here with a huge lizard. And she's like, oh, yeah, that's my pet lizard. Just, going for a walk. The lizard is not really happy about sitting in the ship all the time, so they want to go on a walk. And I'm like, okay, well, lady, you know what would be really evil? When the person you just met would now go to your ship you landed in and steal it and leave you behind with your pet lizard on this planet to die. Now, of course, I have never done that because that would be super evil. And no, I actually did it, and I did go a step further. I sold the ship because it was shit. I did that. But here's the thing. It's completely inconsequential. It doesn't matter what I did. Like, I'm pretty sure the person will actually appear somewhere else again at some point and will try to sell me something. And nothing matters. Nobody complained about it. Like, nothing. There are quite a bit of moments where I also try to kill some NPCs, and I would have kind of expected a reaction, and nothing happened. I was just, oh, yeah, you can loot them. Nobody saw it. Yeah, there's just a dead body lying on the ground now. Do whatever you like. I was like, huh? Okay. Speaking of nobody gives a damn, actually, your NPCs give a damn. So if you want to be evil, make sure if you want to take some NPCs from Constellation with you, make sure you are taking the people with you who have the least of the morality issues. Like, Sarah Morgan is definitely lawful good. And so what I did was I needed one more ship to level up my perk. And I was looking for this ship for like half an hour. I didn't find any ships. It was like cursed, right? It was like the game knew what I tried to do and prevented it. And then I found a settler ship. And I was just like, all right, F5 here. And weapons free. So destroyed the settler ship. I got my last perk. Of course, by the way, next time I jumped to another system, I had bounty hunters just coming in and space pirates, and it was like, are you shitting me? The whole time, nothing. And now you're just giving me all the ships when I was done. Yeah, of course. But the reaction of Sarah was really interesting, because Sarah was mega pissed. She's still pissed. If I'm meeting her on my ship, she is like, oh, it's you. Yeah, get out of my sights. Don't talk to me. Or are we done with talking? Good, because I don't want to talk to you anymore. Or when I want to ask her something personal, she's like, nah, I'm not in the mood for that. Or you don't deserve that. It's like, whoa, okay. She didn't like that at all. I don't know if I can fix that. It's definitely something I'm trying to figure out at some point. Now, she is wow. And you have to be a bit careful, because if they're hating you too much, they're leaving the group and they will never talk to you ever again. Not too important to me, because the more I'm playing the game, the more I have a problem with companions becoming, or feel like they become, useless. Like at the beginning, you definitely take them with you because, man, are you happy that they can carry some shit. But I'm now at the point with my ship, with my character, where I mostly don't need that. And the companion is mostly a hindrance, because hindrance. There we go. I'm making up words. Hindrance, especially if you're trying to just sneak around. I'm like, that was one of the worst parts at the beginning. I was trying to skill up sneaking, and oh man, my follower was just in the way all the time because they were not good at it, and I didn't want to take Andrea with me. Yeah. At this point, I have nobody with me. I actually looking for a way to get to the Isolist perk, so that I can just stay for myself and get some extra stats when I'm doing that. But I have now reached a point in gameplay where just I don't need that anymore, right? I don't need that anymore. I don't need them, and I'm just glad that I don't have them. Also, again, if you're doing something they don't like, oh, they get pissy. And worst case scenario, they're literally just leaving you with the items. As like, what?
Well, hey there.
Like, okay, well, that's not good. So, yeah. I'm just like, I'm just not 100% convinced about the followers, especially if you have like reached a point where you have some power, right? So that's that. But beyond that,
Good to see you.
I still enjoy my time. Like, a lot of people have probably said it, and this is the last thing I will say, and then we're wrapping it up for this week at least, is it's a Bethesda game.
A year or two back, I shared a
Like, it's through and through a Bethesda game. You know, it has its quirks, it has its issues, and it's still fun. If you enjoyed Bethesda games and you were always able to kind of look beyond that, then you would still enjoy your time in Starfield. If you always hated Bethesda games for whatever reason, this one will probably have the same issues. I enjoy my time. I'm actually really looking forward to all the mods and when we are getting official mod support. Like it's already crazy how many mods are out there and how many mods are actually doing something really useful when it comes to what the game has to offer. Now, there are of course also a lot of not safe for work mods out there, from like kinky posters and all that weird stuff to like literally naked mods already. Yeah, it's I realized that when I've been streaming the game and I was just browsing Nexus mods to, see what they have to offer, and people were like, "Hey, can you not just show us like some of the mods they have, and can we not just browse them together?" And I'm like, "No, no, we can't because there are a lot of anime titties here, and I would like to keep my account if that is possible." So yeah, don't go to Nexus mods on a whim when not safe for work is not an option for whatever reason. But we will be back next week with more Starfield. And what I want to do next week, I want to talk about just some of the quests, not main quest, but just some of the quests and how they are structured, and some of the issues I think this game has. And I'm now very interested what the camera is doing. Oh, okay. I was actually like thinking the camera will go into the wall and I'm sleeping. That fits. No, like I definitely want to talk about a few like real story missions, right? But I would try to keep it non-spoilery, right? I wanna talk about like some of the quest lines you can do in this game, but I don't want to spoiler the story. And I have to see how I do that. I will figure something out. With that said, thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget, if you enjoy this, to leave a sub for the channel. If you ever want to check out my live streams, we are streaming from Tuesday to Friday and sometimes even Saturday or Sunday, depending on, over at kick.com/ChaosMole. No, I'm not on Twitch and not streaming anymore on YouTube. But yeah, you can find me there. Check out my other channels, especially the Mole Under Management channel. It's a channel I've been fostering for quite some months, and it has been growing substantially. There are tons of strategy games coming out because that's what that channel is completely focusing on. Like if you love strategy games, RTS, building, management games, that's the channel for you. And I think the next, now actually we have a review coming up for Dune this week, and then I think the next big release is City Skylines 2. I already do some videos on that there if you want to check it out. But enough talk about non-Starfield things, because I will be back next week with more Starfield talk, and then there will be some videos here on the channel in the meantime. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And again, click the bell icon if you subscribe to the channel to get informed when that's happening. With that said, thanks so much for watching. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.